I quickly began packing without much of a greeting. Watching me, my ex-husband spoke up. You don't shed a single tear, huh? It seems that when he had pleaded for the divorce, he was prepared for me to cry and resist. Honestly, I thought he was quite conceited. My feelings had cooled off too. After all, post-divorce, he'll be the one struggling more than me. Far from crying, I had to restrain myself from laughing out loud. What? What do you mean? He looks at me with a puzzled expression. Between a housewife like you and an elite salaryman like me, you'd be the one struggling, right? Plus, I'll remarry, but you'll end up alone. Thinking normally, that might be the case. But it seems like Catherine, your affair partner, is quite something. Wait, why do you know Catherine's name? My name is Emily, a 32-year-old housewife. I met my husband Tom at a mixer. Because we were the same age, we had many common interests and quickly became close friends. Furthermore, my husband worked as a salesman for a trading company, and his earnings were much higher than the average of our peers. Thanks to that, I've been leading a life without any constraints. If there was a concern, there was only one, that our marital life was not going well. Although there's just one concern, it's quite serious. Before I knew it, 7 years had passed in our marriage. At first, we were really in love, being affectionate almost daily, and no matter how busy my husband was, we always had our meals together. But the relationship between us, that had been filled with love, had completely cooled down. Take care. What about dinner? I don't need it, I'll eat out. I'll be home late, so you can go to bed first. Right, got it. In the early days of our marriage, he used to say things like, eating Emily's cooking is my greatest joy, but now coming home around midnight has become the norm. He comes home after I've gone to sleep and heads off to work in the morning without much conversation. I feel like I'm being avoided by a teenage son. It was during these typical days that I noticed a certain change in my husband. Wait, did he buy this hair wax? And he even has a complete skincare set. And even cologne. Until then, to be honest, my husband hardly ever took care of his appearance. He said he only wore suits, so he hardly had any casual clothes. But recently, he's been buying a lot of branded clothes. I wouldn't mind if there was a change in his mindset. In fact, I used to think he was too careless about his appearance. However, the reason for this change in attitude seems to be for impure reasons. Observing my husband's behavior, something seems suspicious. He has started using his smartphone secretly, and he always takes it with him to the bathroom and even the shower. Up until now, he used to leave it carelessly on the sofa, and I was always worried I would accidentally sit on it. Why has he suddenly changed so much? The more he came home late, the more I began to doubt him because of his strange behavior. Could he possibly be cheating on me? But there's only suspicion and no concrete evidence. Even though our relationship has cooled down so much, deep down, I still wanted to believe in him. The thought that my suspicions might be true scared me. Trying to escape from the harsh reality, I made efforts to improve our relationship. I tried to engage him in more conversations and even suggested going out together. But every time I tried to reach out, he would push me away coldly. That's understandable. We've been married for 7 years, and our relationship has felt like a mere facade for the past few years. But even if I tried to approach him, I was treated poorly and it felt very lonely. As this continued, my emotions became more and more distressed. One night, unable to hold back, I mustered the courage to ask him directly. "Tell me, you're not cheating on me, are you?" When I asked, he just stared at my face and remained silent. "Please say something. Are you cheating or not?" He remained silent for a while. Then, from the sofa where he was sitting, he silently stood up and sat down on a chair in front of me at the table. He then bowed his head in front of me. "I'm sorry, Emily. I want a divorce." I was left speechless by this unexpected statement. Without even considering how I felt, Tom said, "I found someone else I love. I want to start a new life with her." How could he so unapologetically make such a selfish remark? How did he feel about our 7 years together? I had a feeling there was another woman, but I never expected him to say something like this so suddenly. All my efforts to mend our relationship were in vain. Was the Tom I fell in love with always this selfish and cruel? When we first met, I thought he was the most wonderful person, unparalleled by anyone else. Unable to utter a word, my mind was just filled with these thoughts. Then Tom said something even more shocking. "Actually, she's pregnant with my child. For the child's future, I want to be with her." My head started spinning and I felt like collapsing right there. I truly felt everything go white before my eyes. Tom and I didn't have children. It's not like we had been using contraception for the past 7 years. On the contrary, we actively tried to have a child and even engaged in fertility treatments. Despite all our efforts, we weren't blessed with a child. Tests indicated Tom had fertility issues, yet he always expressed a deep desire for a child. That's why, even though we knew it was difficult, we never gave up. I believed I was doing my best to meet Tom's hopes. Although recently our marital relationship had cooled, it seems Tom's affair and having a child with the other woman played a big role in his decision to divorce. I've always wanted a child, and I want to show my mother her grandchild as soon as possible. You understand how I feel, don't you? So, please grant me a divorce. My mother-in-law has been seriously ill and hospitalized for about 2 years. I understand Tom's wish to let his mother hold her grandchild as soon as possible, but to have another woman bear his child instead of his wife is just too cruel. I've always wanted a child too. That's why I even tried fertility treatments. I thought we shared the pain of not being able to have a child together. Do you realize how selfish you sound? You betrayed me! I yelled, letting my anger take over. But Tom just looked down and said, "I'm truly sorry." His behavior, as if waiting for the storm to pass, only irritated me more. Who is this woman? Just because she's pregnant, I can't possibly accept this idea of divorce. I urged Tom to tell me more about the woman, but he said, "I'm sorry, but please spare me that. I want to protect her privacy." Excuse me? How selfish can you be? I have a right to know as your wife. Talk to me properly. Even when I pressed him like this, Tom stubbornly refused to reveal any details about the woman. She's 2 years younger than you, Emily. Is that all? She's a company employee. This is getting nowhere. He must really care about her. No matter how much I pressed, Tom didn't provide much information. We continued to discuss the matter for several days, but throughout those days, I never once agreed to his request for a divorce. I didn't want things to go his way. Facing me, he kept trying to persuade. Please, I no longer have feelings for you. Continuing this marriage will only make you feel empty, won't it? I've already discussed this with my mother and she's given her consent. It seemed Tom had already settled matters with mother-in-law. This genuinely shook me because I thought we had a good relationship, even though we had grown distant recently. Tom continued to reveal one shocking fact after another. I've already given her an engagement ring. We're planning to move into the same apartment soon, so all that's left is for you and me to get divorced. I felt like I was going to pass out. Tom was serious about being with his affair partner. Still, I did not consent to a divorce. Our exchanges like this continued for nearly a month. One day, as if losing patience, Tom knelt down before me, deeply apologetic. I can't take it anymore. Please, finally grant me the divorce. Our relationship has been broken for a long time. There's no point in continuing like this. Please, please divorce me. Tom looked at my eyes and said these words. I had held out for nearly a month. Maybe it's time to accept a divorce. Fine, let's get divorced. But know that I'll be taking a property division. I understand that. I'm prepared for it. From there, we discussed the details regarding the property division. I took half of the balance from our joint account. Tom also agreed to cover my moving expenses. And then I signed the divorce paper Tom had prepared. Many emotions flooded my heart as I filled out the divorce paper. Even though our relationship had cooled off over time, we lived under the same roof for 7 years. To think that it all ended with just a piece of paper? But I no longer had any feelings left for Tom. The next day, I submitted the documents to the local office, and our mutually agreed divorce was finalized. After divorcing me, I heard that Tom married the other woman almost immediately. I don't know if he was being rushed by her, but given that they were planning to have a child, they probably wanted to be together as soon as possible. Despite not even finishing organizing the items in the apartment we used to share. I was honestly shocked at the speed of it all. I thought I might as well quickly pack up my belongings, so I headed to the apartment where I used to live with Tom. It seemed our timing overlapped as Tom was also at the apartment. I quickly began packing without much of a greeting. Watching me, Tom spoke up. You don't shed a single tear, huh? It seems that when Tom had pleaded for the divorce, he was prepared for me to cry and resist. Honestly, I thought he was quite conceited. My feelings had cooled off too. Perhaps because I had been refusing the divorce for so long, Tom might have assumed that I still loved him. It seems there's a misunderstanding. The reason I didn't immediately accept the divorce was partly due to my stubbornness not to move according to Tom's wishes, and partly to investigate his mistress on my own. After all, post-divorce you'll be the one struggling more than me. Far from crying, I had to restrain myself from laughing out loud. What? What do you mean? Tom looks at me with a puzzled expression. Between a housewife like you and an elite salaryman like me, you'd be the one struggling, right? Plus, I'll remarry, but you'll end up alone. Thinking normally, that might be the case. But it seems like Catherine, your affair partner, is quite something. Wait, why do you know Catherine's name? Did you think I was simply being petulant and refusing our divorce? I had been hiring a detective agency to investigate all along. Tom's face turns pale. I had gathered a lot of information about his mistress over a few weeks. Firstly, her name is Catherine. She's 27 years old. Actually, she's been divorced twice and currently lives with her parents. She's said to be quite promiscuous, frequently changing partners. For that reason, although she has a child with her first husband, the husband has custody. And due to concerns over her influence, Catherine is apparently prohibited from seeing her own child. In fact, it seems Catherine has other men besides my ex-husband. The detective apparently saw her going to a hotel with another man. I had them take pictures as proof. When I shared all this information and showed him the photos, my ex-husband collapsed on the spot. No way. There's no way Catherine is that kind of woman. She only has eyes for me, and we're planning to build a happy family together. My ex-husband seems to be really smitten with Catherine. As annoying as it is, this woman does seem to have a knack for seducing men. While she doesn't stand out in looks, she probably has a natural way of captivating men. This has to be a lie, right? This is all a fabrication you made to throw me off. These photos are edited, aren't they? Good grief. Was my ex-husband really this foolish? If you don't want to believe it, that's fine. But even now, your mistress is connected with other men. Oh, right. She's not just your mistress now, but your new wife, isn't she? For all you know, the child might not even be yours. As I said this, my ex-husband's face grew increasingly pale. It can't be. No, Catherine wouldn't. This is based on the detective's findings, so there's a high chance you've been deceived. Maybe among her multiple boyfriends, you were the only one with the best earnings? That's probably why she chose you as her husband. It's quite an honor, isn't it? Even if the child isn't biologically yours, you always wanted one, so take good care of them. With that final blow, I told my ex-husband and then left the apartment with my belongings. After a while, I received an email from my ex-husband. The content was about wanting to reconcile. Just as I had predicted, it seems the child Catherine gave birth to wasn't my ex-husband's. When my ex-husband confronted Catherine, she brazenly responded, "I didn't know whose child it was until it was born either." However, my ex-husband had already married Catherine long before. Therefore, legally, the child Catherine bore must undoubtedly be raised as my ex-husband's. To Catherine, my ex-husband was nothing more than a cash cow. As evidence, when it came time to pay me property division, my ex-husband had to shoulder both his and Catherine's portions. Because of this, he had paid me a total of $80,000. My ex-husband was livid and confronted Catherine, but Catherine said, "Didn't you happily serve me as well?" And one day, she vanished, leaving the child behind. My ex-husband called and pleaded, "You were right all along. I was deceived. I'm truly sorry. I want to start over." I felt nothing but disgust. Do you really think I'd come back to you just because it's convenient for you now? The fact that you had an affair and betrayed me remains unchanged, except the reality. With that, I hung up the phone. From a mutual acquaintance, I heard that afterward, my ex-husband handed over the child Catherine left behind to Catherine's parents, insisting they take responsibility. Catherine's parents reportedly said, "That's inconvenient for us. Please raise the child yourself." But my ex-husband firmly refused, stating, "I have no obligation to raise a child I'm not related to by blood." He submitted DNA test results to prove that the child wasn't his, and even revoked the legal acknowledgement of the child. Catherine's parents, seemingly unaware that the child wasn't my ex-husband's, eventually located Catherine and brought her back home. Now they're making her raise the child, essentially keeping her under house arrest. They're closely monitoring her, ensuring she doesn't meet any man outside. By the way, although my ex-husband is no longer connected to Catherine, he paid me $80,000 in property division, which included Catherine's share, and as a result, his savings were completely drained. He has reportedly demanded that Catherine repay the property division he fronted for her. But since she can't pay what she doesn't have, she doesn't respond to him at all. Consequently, my ex-husband has become a divorced man with no savings. Moreover, after facing such a terrible outcome, he couldn't focus on his job, made multiple errors, and has now been demoted to a regional department where there's little hope for promotion. Apparently, he now lives a lonely and isolated life. On the other hand, I moved back to my family home and have been helping with our family's farming business. A few years later, I fell in love with a local fisherman and got married. While we don't have children, I'm spending every day happily with my husband, who treats me very kindly.